for it to.
Sister to the noise, yeah, the mess we make. Machine Blunt Kelly, get caught in the fray. Facts and logic with a twist of chest. Strip it down to truth, yeah, forget the rest. Humor blows the lies right out of the park. Look beyond the shadows, dissect the dark. Sparks of laughter fire up the night, bringing clarity when they blur the fight. Cut through the chaos, yeah, the tangled lies. Steampunk Kelly with a set of clear eyes. Truths and jokes gonna rock this show. Step into light where the real facts glow.
Happy Friday, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. It is Friday, the 7th of February, 2025. Can you believe it? We're in the second month of the year. What is it, 2 weeks, 3 weeks now into this administration? Can't tell. It feels like it's already been a year. Guys, we have a great guest here today. Our episode is going to be talking about DEI, the who, what, when, where, why, and how with Wendy, Amengual, Wark. I have it written because I wanted to make sure I pronounced it correctly. I have Spark written next to it, so Wark Spark. So thank you so much for joining us, Wendy. For our listeners here, Wendy is the founder of Inclusion Strategy Solutions. She's a MWBE certified consulting firm that helps corporations, academic institutions, governmental agencies, and nonprofit organizations internationally to advance their organization's mission through a focus on diversity, equity, inclusion, and access. She's a thought leader in the field of diversity, equity, inclusion, and access for more than 25 years, having worked with the United States EEOC, the New York City Commissions of Status of Women, the United Nations Fourth World Conference for Women, Friends of San Francisco, and so much more. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are really excited to have you on and get some insight on what the hell is happening.
You know, Wendy, I have been waiting for I've been really trying to get somebody like you on the show for at least a month now. And it feels like DEI has been under attack. It's been turned into a pejorative. Most of the people who use it have no idea what they're talking about. I mean, it's like, I say it's like arguing about how many right angles there are in a circle. And Elon, what's his face, has not helped the cause at all. Could you explain? And I think what happens is certain people have deliberately tried to conflate it with affirmative action, which, by the way, there was nothing wrong with affirmative action, but they've tried to make it like affirmative action, where there are quotas and things like that. Could you explain a little bit about the history? You've been in this since 1988, right?
Yes.
So you've got some, history going back into affirmative action and everything. Could you explain what affirmative action is compared to DEI, how they're different, and just to dissect the whole issue a little bit?
All right. Well, first, thank you, Kelly and Nahan, for having me. And it's my pleasure to give a little bit of the history, because you're right, it's important. Most people get the sound bites, and the sound bites might be distorted. And so for clarification, so affirmative action was first established by President John F. Kennedy in 1961, and it never included quotas. There was a lawsuit filed that went to the Supreme Court in 1978 that said no quotas are allowed, but they were never ever part of affirmative action or the Civil Rights Act that President Johnson signed in 1965. And he had also reiterated affirmative action in his executive order 11246 in 1964, which relates to government contractors. And it's what the words sound like. It's affirmatively acting, taking an act affirmatively as an employer to ensure that there's not discrimination in hiring, recruiting, or the treatment of employees. That's it. It's really simple. It's saying, I'm not going to not hire you because you are female. It originally did not include gender. That was added. But because of your race, your religion, some of the wording and language is different depending on different additions to it over the years. But basically, that's all it means, right? And so there have been fights against it since it has been part of our law. And so since it's machine pun Kelly, what came first, the law or the abuse, right? So I've been thinking a lot about eggs lately since I joined Costco. So the laws came as a result of the abuse. The laws came because people, when I entered the workforce in the last century, it was legal for employers to say they would not hire me because I was female. It was legal in the United States of America.
Wow.
And most people don't comprehend that. Like, there were jobs I could not apply for because of my accident of birth, right? And and it was legal for employers to not hire someone because they were Black. And so when you look at that and think about that in our lifetime, this is not ancient history. People like to say, oh, slavery ended, with the Emancipation Proclamation. Well, perhaps that institution in the United States, which was legal, ended with that law. But other forms of discrimination, including sexual harassment. Sexual harassment is discrimination under federal law. So I wrote an article 20 years ago. I couldn't believe it. I pulled it up this morning in preparation for this conversation, but it's 20 years ago. I wrote an article called The Evolution of Inclusion. And I wrote it as a tutorial to say, first there was affirmative action, civil rights, and then we got into the 90s and we said, okay, we have the law. I started my career with the city of New York investigating discrimination claims. So I have personally investigated thousands of claims of discrimination, including sexual harassment. And there are two things that are really important. When I do workshops on this, and I won't call a 45-minute webinar education, it's not. Let's be clear, that's an infomercial. But when I facilitate workshops on this, I explain that very few complaints of discrimination are actually false claims, because this is one of the big, pushbacks on this, and has been for a long time.
Oh, right, yeah.
She's just lying. She's a bad employee, right? The percentage
I would just guess that it's like rape accusations, where for every false accusation, there are at least 10 instances where the victim stayed silent because they were afraid of the repercussions. Is that accurate, or?
I'd add at least 1 0.
At least 1 0.
Yeah. So it's statistically negligent.
Wow.
So yeah. So, and that's the data we have, because, as you know, people don't come forward for myriad reasons, right? They don't want to get fired. They don't want to be, have other retributions occur. So when you look at that and you say, okay, we got to the point where most states, not all, have statewide laws on top of federal laws, and then many cities as well. So we say, okay, we've got laws in place that protect us because we need them, because people are people, and we're messy, and we're horrible, and we do terrible things to one another. So that's a fact. Then, if you want to be an employer of choice, you take it to the next level. And that's what happened in the 90s, because in the 90s, people were saying, well, maybe you're hiring me, but you're treating me differently. I'm not getting promoted at the same rate as my male counterparts or my white counterparts. I'm not getting paid the same thing. We have, we have Women's Pay Equity Day, which is April. So I have to work 4 more months than a man who has the exact same education, qualifications, experience that I do, and job title and responsibility. I have to work 4 more months to make his salary. As a white woman, as a Latina, I have to work 8 more months. As a Native American woman, I have to work 9.5 more months.
Wow.
As a Black woman, 6 more months. All right. That's not my opinion. That's data to back it up. And I know currently there's a lot of pushback. We don't like science. We don't like data. We don't like facts. But these are facts. So
I love a good fact.
I was laid off. My whole team was laid off from a job, and I was being recruited for a new job, and they asked me, "Do you have any referrals?" And we're getting some kind of echo for some reason. Anyway, I was asked if I had any referrals, and my team lead was my boss, and she, was also getting laid off. So I, recommended her. And then while I was standing there, like 5 minutes later, she gets a phone call. She gets offered $2 an hour less than what I was making, even though she had more education, had a higher position than me right at that time, was offered the exact same job for $2 an hour less. Yeah. And that's, I think it's helpful as if we as white, cisgender, straight men would realize that things like that it's not just hysterics or something, that it actually happens. And I actually, joined with her to sign something to, testify to what happened, so that the company that we ended up being hired for would never use that subcontractor again. So
good for you. Right. Because if we don't have allies, right. So, and you're hearing a lot of this now, right. If I don't stand up for someone who is an immigrant, who may not have been able to get their documentation for a long list of potential complicated reasons, right. If I don't stand up for them, then how can I say I deserve whatever rights and equity, right? So thank you for that. And I think that's an important part of this conversation. It's all of us, right? So that leads us to that next level of diversity, because, there's a professor at the University of Michigan who I adore. His name is Scott Page, and he's an economist. He doesn't do what I do, but he wrote a book called The Difference about 15 years ago. And it is about how organizations, whether they be schools or whatever it is, are better, more effective when they are diverse. So he did all these studies with students, where they showed that just the 3 of us, with our diversity, our geographic diversity, all the different things about us that make us diverse, enrich the end product, enrich our conversation, because our different perspectives and experiences, etc. So diversity is a statement of fact, right? I'm not, if I say we're 3 diverse humans, right, that's just it. I don't have to do anything about that, right? It's just, we're here, we exist. But that next piece, right, the equity, is where it gets really challenging, because equity means that, let's say there's a law. The law says you may not be allowed to jaywalk. Jaywalking is illegal. So the 3 of us are in the same place at the same time, and all 3 of us jaywalk. Maybe you're rushing because you have to pick up your kid from the doctor. Maybe I'm rushing because I'm late for an interview. It doesn't matter. Whatever the thing is, all 3 of us violate the same law. Equity is all 3 of us are held equally accountable.
Right.
Okay. So it's not that the law exists or doesn't exist. It's how we're treated, right? The equity is the application of that behavior, right? The response to it. So that's the equity piece. And we know that there's massive disparity in terms of equity globally. This is not a US issue. Okay.
Yeah, well, we can definitely see that already with the what crossing the border doesn't make you an illegal person, right? You just broke the law, right? You just jaywalked, essentially. It's kind of the same thing, right?
So like,
there is no equity
as
there.
an example, in the workforce, you have 2 people that are doing, they've gotten the same performance scores or whatever. They're doing the same job. The white guy gets offered a some sort of class or some sort of training program that he goes through and he passes with flying colors. The woman never gets offered that training course, and then when it comes time for promotions, he gets promoted because he went through that training course. Is that an example of like how
Absolutely.
equity might not exist in a workforce?
That's right. And there's another thing, and it's called the minority tax. So the minority tax works this way. We set up barriers, we being society. So we broke the social compact or contract with Black Americans. When we said,
Right.
four-fifths a human, 2/3. So we break our contract with you, and then we treat you differently. And then because you're treated differently, because separate but equal is never equal, right? So you go to a school and the walls are breaking down, and then all those things. So it's harder to learn. You don't get up-to-date books. And then we blame you because you're not advancing. We blame you because you're in poverty. We say you broke it, you fix it, even though we didn't break it and we can't fix it. So the minority tax is applied in the workplace to exactly what you're talking about, Kelly, because now if number one, I'm not given the same opportunity, right? So I'm not, I'm not invited out for drinks or to golf with you, right? Which is where we build trust. How we build relationships, and then you get to know me. And so there's a big project coming up, and you give it to Nahan because you two are buds, and you both golf, and I don't golf or drink scotch, so I don't get the opportunity, right? And so that escalates and elevates because as you then move up that ladder, the gap is increasing. And then what happens? They say, see, you hired that affirmative action hire, that woman, that Black person, that Latina, and she is fulfilling the prophecy of failing. She's not rising to the occasion. She's not excelling. I've had hundreds of white male executives and men of color say to me, they will not meet alone in their offices with their women subordinates because they don't want to be accused of sexual harassment. And so I asked them, are you meeting with the men alone? And they say, yes. And I'm like, that's discrimination. You have to stop that, right? Either you meet with no one alone or you meet with everyone alone. And why are you afraid to meet with them alone? Because if you behave in an honorable and respectful way in the workplace, false accusations aren't going to happen. I have never been accused of sexual harassment in my 30 plus years of work. Never once, right? So let's look at how that interaction, let's look at relationships. That's the inclusion piece, right? Because inclusion requires us to act. It's not passive. I have to invite you to the party. If you just show up and knock on my door, crash in my party, I'm gonna be like, get out of here. Unless you have a really, if you have a good bottle of wine, we might. But that inclusion piece. First, I'm going to invite you, and where a lot of employers have failed at this is they hired women and people of color beginning in the 90s in new numbers, across new titles, across new opportunities. But once they got there, they didn't know what to do with them. Right. And so that's why a lot of the affinity groups were established. Affinity group is the women's group, the LGBTQI group, etc. And those groups were established because if there were only 3 women in the group and 1,000 men, then we're going to come together and as women talk about our experiences, support one another, etc. So that's what the affinity group evolution was. But what
what people nowadays try to call identity politics and stuff like that? It's like
safe spaces for women
and left out, so they got together to talk about their experience. So they're the ones that are really making divisions.
That's right, because we're excluding men, and so.
How dare we, by the way? How dare we?
Oh, yes.
And I just like to point out, as I've been reading up on this, I had my eyes open. It's not just about gender or race or religion or even sexuality. It's about, some people are, overweight and get left out. There's different generations that are involved. There's handicaps that are involved. There's veteran status. There's a lot of things. And you're going to I think that, and like with women, like maybe they don't go golfing and sip scotch because they're taking the kids to soccer practice on the weekend. And
Oh, we
they
love
have
to golf and sip scotch. Like we want to
and
be able to do
so
that.
they don't go to golf and sip scotch. They go to soccer and watch the kids and sip wine.
Yeah.
But there's different interests. There's different social
Calling
groups.
us out
And
over
so
here,
you're
Kelly.
just going to attach yourself to the people, or in those social groups, and
Yes.
and you're not consciously excluding other people. You're just being around the people you're around. And from what I understand, a big part of DEI is becoming conscious of your predilections to be around certain people and to consciously say, no, I need to include these other people in my office and find activities I can do with them so that they have the same opportunity as the people that are like me. Am I misrepresenting that?
Actively. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And the assumptions that we make, because I've had people say, well, no, I'm not going to invite her because women don't golf. And I know lots of women who golf and drink scotch, to Nahan's point, but we make decisions. And some of that is, for example, we call it benevolent paternalism. So you might have an employee who's 7 months pregnant, and every year the team goes to a conference in San Francisco, and everybody piles on planes and goes to San Francisco to this conference. But you decide that because this employee is 7 months pregnant, that she shouldn't be flying. So you say to her, you stay home, you zoom in, we'll zoom you in for the important things, right? Mm-hmm. But you don't ask her. She doesn't get to decide. You make the decision. And that's why it's paternalistic or maternalistic, whichever. Because I want to be clear, there aren't only men doing this to women. Mm-hmm. There are women who also do this to women, right? There are people of color who discriminate against other people of color. So if we make a decision based on any of those characteristics, that's discrimination. And so the inclusion piece is the hard part. That's the hard part, because that means I have to learn about you. Just like they're scrubbing the gender pronouns from, some of the federal websites now. I mean, pardon me.
Take it out of your email.
Right, from your signature. So, because that's scary to somebody for whatever reason. But anyhow, the point is this, that act of adding that gender pronoun didn't exist 15 years ago. Mm-hmm. Inclusion means we have to constantly evolve. We have to constantly learn. We have to understand. To your point, Kelly, there's so many different characteristics, right? I'm not a veteran. And so it behooves me yes, Melody, it is very hard to be the first anything in a workplace where you're the only representative of your in-group, right? And finding some camaraderie and finding allies and support. So being inclusive means I invite you. I break through and say, come have lunch with us. Mm-hmm. And what do you like? Because I'm not going to assume that you eat hamburgers, right? Let's make sure that I ask the question. This is the biggest and easiest thing. Just ask, what do you prefer? Right? If we organize a restaurant, make sure that it's accessible. Right. Do they have a ramp? I can't assume, right? So those assumptions keep getting us messed up. And if you think about, the people who make you most comfortable, and this is not about workplace or, this is in life. The people who make us most comfortable, ask us what we prefer. Ask us what we like. If I invite you to dinner, I'm not going to just assume that you like fish. So those kinds of questions, which are so easy and so, I don't know, just inviting, can
even
build.
Like a lot of times it's just, I feel like just basic kindness and human decency. Some people get upset if you mention that there's if you ask about, do you have any food allergies? Like some people, they can't eat gluten, and they say I can't eat gluten, and then I invite you over for dinner, and you're like sitting
There's too many people that say they can't eat gluten now, though.
Well, whatever. I mean, it's like whether they can or not is kind of irrelevant.
Right.
Like if you can't eat gluten, if somebody says they can't eat gluten, make food without gluten. Right. I mean, it's not like they're asking you to make gluten-free pasta. Serve rice. Like
Yeah.
it's not
Yeah.
like it's that hard to just make a meal without gluten. And to me, it's just basic kindness. Like, don't make people defend that they can't eat gluten or make them feel
whatever.
guilty for it or whatever. And
Right.
the easiest way to do that is just ask them, do you have any food allergies I need to know about? Like,
Right.
make them
And
feel
I use
comfortable telling you, I can't eat gluten. Thanks for asking.
right. And to that point, I'll use the word preferences. All right. And I'll tell you a tool that I've been using for years is called anonymity. Now, it's gotten us into a lot of trouble on the interwebs, but when you are preparing for a workshop or an event, if you send out a pre-survey, but it's anonymous, then I don't have to be self-conscious about, as long as if there are people who don't want gluten or can't have gluten or need accessibility, instead of, having that light that make me self-conscious or embarrassed, it's anonymous, it's safe, right? A huge part of this is creating a workplace or any environment. This is not limited to workplace where people can feel safe. So that's inclusion. Access is to the point of, if someone has a disability. So I want to get to this thing because this is such a sore point for so many people that, people will say, oh, you're going to hire someone whether they're qualified or not. No. Never do that, right? So the Americans with Disabilities Act came out in 1990. And what it says is, if you have a qualified candidate or employee, you then have the responsibility to make a reasonable accommodation if it does not cause an undue hardship. And I'll give you an example. A reasonable accommodation is, I'm visually impaired, so you get me a computer screen that is extra sized so that it accommodates my vision issue. Right? Does that sound reasonable to you? Right? It's
pretty reasonable.
For most employers, not an undue hardship to spend a couple of $1,000s on a special screen for me. Okay, I'll give you example B. I have claustrophobia and I want a private elevator.
That would be unreasonable, I think.
Yeah.
Correct. All right. So you see, so if the employee comes and says to their employer, I'm requesting an accommodation, what we encourage is have a conversation with them. Right. We had a client once, they hired a woman who is in a wheelchair. And before she started, they expanded the doorway to a shared office, put in a special desk for her, did all of these things. She did not request any of these things, nor did she need them because she has a very low profile chair. So the 2 weeks prior to her date of employment, all this construction and dust, her coworkers had to, future coworkers had to be moved to another place, very disruptive. Everybody was unhappy. So now, the day she starts on the new job, she is feeling incredibly embarrassed and uncomfortable because they did this thing she didn't ask for.
Right.
Right. And this is how kind of, these efforts get a bad name because they went and the pendulum swung so far. Right. So we want people to calm down and use common sense and just be kind and pay attention. So that's what access is. Access is, if I'm telecommuting because Accessoride takes me 3 hours each way to get to an office, and I'm going to be more engaged and be more productive working from home, then let me work from home. If you can't trust me to get my work done and sitting next to you,
that's something that annoys me. Like it's not like if you're at work there, like if you're in an office, there aren't people that skate and don't do their job. They act like if you're at work, you're sitting there.
Right.
No, I'm sorry. I think from my experience, people are more productive at home than in the office.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's be real. Let's be real.
You don't have coworkers in the cubicle next to you trying to show you a cat video or something. I mean, it's like, I feel more productive at home,
There's that camaraderie there. I can agree with you on that part. However, I've worked from home for over 12 years now. And I will agree with you, Kelly, that I've been more productive working from home. I have the opportunity to look out the window and take a break without a boss helicoptering over me and being like, what are you doing right now? I'm like, I'm actually thinking, which makes me productive.
And the boss
But
is
it's, you know,
helicoptering over you is actually not doing any work because they're helicoptering.
exactly. He's like a slumlord, which really, and that's a conversation for a different time about the fact that the reason that everybody wants everybody to go back to work is because they have those properties that they are paying for, and they need to be able to use it. And that's, again, as I said, a conversation for a different time. However, no, I don't. Yeah, why was everybody celebrating the go back to the office executive order that Trump signed? Like, who is that harming? Like, all federal employees must go back into in-person, in the office work. Like, oh yeah, great. Love that my grandpa has to go back as a civil servant to the office when he's more beneficial to the administration when he works from home.
You know, I honestly believe
that
I've
needs
heard
to
it
come
said,
from.
it's so helicoptering boss can feel important by helicoptering. How is he supposed to helicopter if there's no one there to helicopter?
Right. It shows that the position is moot, right?
Yeah.
So they have to prove themselves worthy of a job. You know, people are pretty good at managing themselves at the end of the day. So, you know, but the hierarchy structure is.
And another, like, just to me, like, you started off with the pronouns talking about this. The easiest thing in the world is to call somebody by the pronouns they will prefer to use. Like, if somebody is a born male or assigned male at birth, I'm sorry, and identifies as a woman, to call her a she costs you absolutely nothing at all.
Zero.
It's the same number of syllables as he. It's no effort. But they act like this is like some unreasonable demand. So I think, you know, like, I think that's a really good distinction between reasonable and unreasonable, and how some people take very reasonable things and try to make them unreasonable because they don't fit into their particular religion or worldview. But that's part of the inclusion, right? Like, part of inclusion is I accept people who don't agree with everything I believe and think.
Right.
I also think. Oh, go ahead, Wendy.
No, I was just going to say, as long as those things are not hateful, right? So where I'm a yes and person to that point, but if you deny me the right to exist, if you deny me the right to be your equal, if you deny me the right to access an opportunity, that's where we part ways, right? And so that's the thing, is that, you know, if we can have this conversation. I did a lecture years ago about the pie grows. The pie grows. You know, I love to cook. I love to bake. I don't have one size pan, right? I have multiple size pans. I come from a big family, you know, so you can have that pie grow, because now if each of us brings something to that meal, right? Then there's more of it. It's, you know, this thing of there's only so many slices in the pie. It's this competitive divide and conquer mentality is a very, let's call it lizard brain way of thinking, right? It's not evolved. Now, you know, we don't all evolve at the same pace and the same rate. We're not all exposed to things, but that's the other big part of this, is the communication piece. Because if I take words, right, because words really matter, words are actions, words are important, words are critical, words can harm us, they can help us, they can heal us. But if I demonize and weaponize language that is positive, you know, inclusion, how is that a bad word, right? But if I demonize it and I weaponize it, and then I take away your ability to learn this history. If I ban books, if I burn books like Hitler did, right? If I demonize being an intellectual, if I demonize education, if I demonize communication, and I cut down communication, if I break down our ability to connect, just like they used to have, you know, this firewall. If you told a coworker what you earned, you could get fired, right?
Right.
That's now. Currently, that's illegal. We'll see what will happen with this group. But the point is that, you know, the reason they didn't want us telling each other is that we would get upset. I learned many years ago that a person who I supervised, a white man who was working in my team, who was the lowest producer on my team, who spent half his day smoking cigarettes in the hallway, triggering the alarm. I was in payroll, and I learned that
send him back to the office so he can be more productive, right?
He was making 20% more than me, so similar to yours, right? So I went to my boss's boss, and he said to me, Wendy, he has a wife and 3 kids. And I said, that's irrelevant.
Right.
And I wound up resigning.
Wow.
Right? Because at that time there weren't laws protecting me for that. So understand that keeping secrets, not communicating, is a way of keeping control and keeping oppression. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so information is critical for all of us. I want everyone to get a great education. I want everyone to be able to communicate and have access to information. I think that's the biggest thing that we can do to protect our rights, is to know what they are.
Yeah. I think especially when it comes to labor rights, when I could go on forever on some of that. But if you are working for somebody that says you can't disclose your pay to other workers, you have to ask, why don't they want you to know?
It's illegal to do that.
It's illegal. It's illegal to do that.
It's illegal as hell.
There's a reason they don't want people to know. They don't want people to share. We had a situation where we addressed that, and then even from the very first day that people started, I was a trainer, and I was, I gave people, this is how much money you should be making. And a lot of times the subcontractors would be lying to, the company that I worked for, and they would have these subcontractors that would hire people, and then they get brought on and stuff. And they would lie, and they would tell Accenture that they were paying a certain amount of money when they were actually paying less. And so I would say, are you making this amount of money? And they'd say no. And I'd say, well, tell the boss, and then he would get it worked out. And then once we found out, we would make sure that those subcontractors couldn't work there anymore. But for a long time, all the different I don't know, ranks is not quite the right word, but all the different categories were being paid random different amounts based on whatever the subcontractors initially paid. And so we made sure that everybody knew, this is how much you should get paid. If you're this position, you should get paid about this amount. And it really, and the amazing thing is, the work, I think people might believe when you're doing that there's going to be this kind of acrimonious situation at work. It actually is the opposite. It was the best work situation I ever had. And I worked with amazing people, and and we were mostly just knew each other from Zoom meetings. And they're still friends of mine, even though it's been a year since I worked there. So and that's that meritocracy that you're talking about, right? So if we really have access, so one of the big things, so my home state of New York, so this is going to become very, very important in the next few months and few years, is what are the laws by state, which vary greatly. Right.
Wildly,
there are states where it's illegal, where it's still legal to deny rent to somebody for being gay.
Yeah, that's right.
There's this thought that that's they can't do that. Right. Actually, it's like half the states in the country it's still legal.
Right. Yeah. Yes, especially with gay rights. So no one. So like the bottom line or the base is federal law, right? So but then you could have more regulations, but you can't have less. Right. So
it's the bottom.
Like right. So states like California, Illinois, Connecticut, New York, multiple others have additional laws, right, that protect above and beyond the federal code. And so if you look at one way that people have gotten around this is salary ranges, right? So if your title is, engineer level 2, the pay range might be anything from $30,000 to $70,000 a year, right? And all 3 of us get hired by company X. We're all engineer level 2, but me and Nahan get 35,000, you get 65, right? And what they tell us is, yeah, but you're going to work up toward that and blah, 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 blah. And that's been a way that, we're all being hired for the same title. We're in the same salary group, but we're not being paid the same thing. Right. So that's been one way that employers have skirted around these regulations, which we're now, New York, thank goodness, is just, addressed that in this past year. So that's a thing.
On that, I think one of the things that I hear about DEI that I find annoying is, just hire the person that's the most qualified for the job. Yeah. And it's like, okay, you're talking about one person. You're making the assumption that there is this easy way to determine who is the most qualified. And number three, you're talking about one job. A lot of jobs, it's not just one position they're trying to fill, right? A lot of jobs, there's 100 people, or like with pilots where, like there's thousands of jobs to fill. So it's like to find the most qualified person are the people you find qualified? And, and are you reaching out to everybody, and how do you know if you are finding the most qualified people if you're only reaching out to like white men? Like,
what's the pool look like?
That's right. And that's like with employee referral programs, right? So with employee referral programs, if I'm referring the people I know, in most cases, I'm referring people like me, right? Mm-hmm. And so employee referral programs, as wonderful as they are, can backfire because they tend, we tend to replicate ourselves, right? Mm-hmm. And we stay in our comfort group, our comfort zone. And so those are interesting things to look at. But, when you look at what's the availability, so the formulas, this is where people try to make it look like it's quotas, but it's not. The formula was this: with affirmative action, you would look at demographics. Now, I understand we're not going to have much census data in the next few bits of time, but when we had access to census data, you would look at the census data for a geographic circle. So at the center of the circle is where the employer is headquartered. Now, you may have employees all over the globe, but if you're headquartered in Cincinnati, then we look at the census data for a 30-mile circumference from Cincinnati to see what the available qualified applicant pool is, right? Now, all three of us, if we meet the qualifications, the employer might say, I'm going to hire Nahan over Kelly because they're both qualified, to your point, right? Maybe Kelly has 2 more years experience doing the same thing than Nahan, but you're both qualified. Mm-hmm. Right. But the argument, so where the the quote reverse discrimination claims come out of is exactly that. I had 2 more years experience than her and they hired her. Is she qualified? Yes.
That's all that matters.
Right. Do we have a shortage of women? Yes. Are women 52% of the population and we only have 12% women working here? Yes. Well, but still. Right. So that kind of pushback gets all the airtime and the oxygen and gets amplified. Yeah. Right. It's not the 20 other women who didn't get hired. It's that one guy or one person, doesn't matter, who is making the noise and who will find lots of let's call it groups that will support them making that noise, right? They'll get free legal counsel. They'll get all kinds of organizations who will say, white men and Christians are oppressed in this country, and make a lot of noise and bluster about that. And that's what makes the headlines, right? The 20 other women who didn't get hired for that same job don't get any airtime.
Right.
It's like I think of it as, and like and includes like maybe she has 2 more years, or maybe she has 2 more years of experience than me, and I got hired over her, or the other
vice versa.
I've got 2 more years of experience than her, and she got hired over me, but maybe there's other aspects, other factors that went into that other than gender.
That's what the qualifications, the meritocracy.
Maybe she went to Harvard and I don't have a college degree.
No, we're saying you're equally qualified, right? but you have 2 years above and beyond, right? So the job says a bachelor's plus, 5 years experience, and you have 7. She has a bachelor's in 5, right? She gets hired. You lawyer up. So that's what we're talking about, right?
Okay.
Now,
Yeah.
another thing that's important to talk about is how people get promoted because of their technical, so you might be an amazing computer programmer, right? The best. You get promoted up, promoted up, promoted up. Now you're managing a team, but you may have 0 experience managing people. You may have 0, training and communication training. Think about it. Delegation skills, right? Difficult conversations, motivation, all the things that make an excellent manager or supervisor. So you are 0 in that area, right? But you're a whiz at computer programming, right? So now you're the head of this team, and the team is floundering because you're like, and they're like, we need help, we need guidance, we need you to prioritize, we need you to let us know, what matters, do we need to do this project first or that one, tell me what your expectations are, we need you to communicate to us, right?
And that's not what they do. Yeah.
So
you're speaking my language, by the way. That is, I work in project management. My husband's he's got a master's in computer science. He's a software engineer, but he's not a people manager. I'm a people manager. I'm a project manager. That's what I do. He might have a master's in computer science that I do not have. However, I would be, and he has, more years of experience in his role than I do. However, I have skills that qualify me to be in a position that he's not qualified for, even with the background that he has. Right.
Exactly. That's exactly the point. So what we need to start doing is looking at these situations on a case-by-case basis. One size never fits all. But we like one size fits all, right? We like that broad brush. I mean, making sweeping statements and whatever. So that's part of what we encourage. We really want, just as with an employee who's requesting an accommodation based on a disability, visible or not, then have a conversation with them, right? Don't make assumptions. Have a conversation. And most jobs, we don't do what's called a practical test. A practical test is this. I apply for a job as a painter to paint the walls, right? You might give me a written exam to see if I understand, how many gallons does it take to paint a room that's 12 foot by 30 feet, right? So that's the written test. The practical test is, do I go in the room and throw paint on the windows, or, like, can I actually use a roller, all those kinds of things. So most jobs, to your point, Kelly, you're not testing me. You're not having me conduct interviews or do these things, to see if I'm actually, if the skills on paper, how I'm able to carry them out, how I'm able to conduct myself, right? And so that's where a lot of this comes in as well. A lot of the, this person's not a good, quote, cultural fit, right? Like, what does that mean?
That's supposed to mean.
Yeah, what does that even mean?
Right,
And also, what's your culture? What's your culture like?
Right.
What kind of culture are you, invoking within your company?
Right. So really, that's the difference between the legal piece, right? EEO is Equal Employment Opportunity. We have the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. Their job is, regardless of what people might be saying in the last 24 hours, their job is to establish and enforce employment discrimination law, period. That's the job, right? And so...
Oh, it was the job. It was the job, though. It's not anymore, apparently. So,
well, right.
Because he's removed NLRB, EEOC, and other agency officials.
Right. So the laws still exist, but they're not being carried out or enforced, right?
Right.
As we speak, those laws still are in place until and unless the Congress changes them, which may happen, right? So it's, how are they enforced? How are they?
If Congress changes them at this point, it's not going to be for the better.
Not in this moment. That's unlikely. I agree with you. That's unlikely, right? In the current state of things, yeah. But I think what's important, and to have a note of encouragement and optimism, which I need to do this work, and have had for a long time to do this work is this. You reached out to me, Kelly. We have a voice. We have the opportunity to have this conversation, to share this video with others and help people get access to this information. Whether you're an employee, you could speak up. You could speak up anonymously. You can speak up, you could speak to other employees. You can, as a customer, say, I'm not going to shop there anymore. I'm not going to go to that resort anymore. Whatever the thing is, right? We have a voice. We can use that in the power of our pen. We can use the power of our wallets. The other thing that's very, very important for us to understand is that we must stay connected. We're not alone, because people will get depressed and they'll give up.
Yeah.
And so what you're doing, I cannot thank you enough. This is a lifeline so that people know that they really have rational, sane, compassionate humans who are keeping the conversation open and listening. And so I thank you. This is really, really, really important.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I just want to clarify one thing.
Of course.
Okay, so just in layman's terms, diversity is reaching out to different kinds of people, like not just.
No, diversity is just a statement of fact. We are diverse humans.
Oh, okay. So
There
that's
we go.
just okay. So then equity is what?
Equity is the application, the equal application of rules, right?
Okay.
And equal application of opportunity, right? So you
There you
may
go.
have seen a cartoon that's been around a while where they show 3 people standing on
The baseball
boxes,
thing?
The baseball field, there's the tree one as well. Yeah.
or the tree one, right? And so what they're saying is the first person is tall enough to see over the fence, doesn't even need a box, but has a box. Right? The second person needs 1 box to see over the fence. The third person needs 2 boxes to see over the fence. Equity is that first person saying, here's the box. I don't need it.
Yeah.
I don't need it, right? Do I need a ramp? I don't need a ramp at this moment to get into your office, but I may tomorrow. This is the thing about disabilities. They change all the time, right? So that's equity, is making sure that both access and opportunity and application of rules are equitably enforced. Inclusion is the one that takes the action, Kelly. Inclusion's the one where I have to invite you to participate and then make you comfortable. Ask you, what's your food preference? Ask you, are you a morning person or a night owl? What's going to maximize your potential for our interaction, for our collaboration? One of my favorite words, I named my company Inclusion, right? Is being strategic about it, having strategies that are part of the organizational strategy, woven in, not an afterthought. Because most organizations, it's like diversity's over in this corner. Whereas if my favorite clients, my longest relationships with clients are those that we work with when they're doing their strategic planning. That this is part of everything they do, everything they decide. How do they interact with their customer? Oh, there you go. How do they interact with employees? How do they interact with potential employees? What's the message they're sending? To your point earlier, Nahan, what's their culture? Do I want to be part of that? What happened in the 90s and what will continue to happen is new employees aren't going to go to work somewhere where they don't believe they're going to be welcomed, where they're going to be accepted, where they're going to be safe. And that's the inclusion piece. And that's really, really important, because we're going to see some companies that are going to be exclusionary, and there's going to be an exodus from those places, right? I'm hearing from many, many, many health practitioners about exoduses from certain states because they can't practice anymore. Canada is saying, come up and work in Canada. We'll take. All right. And we're going to see a hemorrhage over there. So how are you creating a place where I want to come and be part of your team? How are you creating a place that says you're safe here, Wendy, and you're valued? That's what we're talking about. That's not law.
So if I'm understanding you correctly, Diversity just means all kinds of people exist.
Mhm.
Period. That's a fact.
Equity just means since all kinds of people exist, all kinds of people should be able to get the same opportunity. And inclusion means because you're only one kind of person, you have to actively and consciously think about how you are including other people that you're just not naturally drawn to. Like you're going to have a natural circle. There's nothing wrong with that. Nobody's saying there's wrong with having a Super Bowl party with your beer buddies. What they're saying is don't only include the Super Bowl parties you have with your beer buddies for promotions. Like it's like you have to include other people in other things, and that might mean taking interest in what they're interested in, might be going to the food restaurants where they eat the food they like to like. And actually, if you do all of that, you might find out at the end of the day, you are a broader, wiser, better person for having done so.
Hey, look at that.
Go to the
You're
head of
a
the
whole
class.
human being.
And that's what I mean. It's like, doesn't that feel good? You know, for me, if I had to eat the same thing every day, I'd be bored to tears, right? I love the diversity of learning about different music, different food, different cultures, different everything. I love that, right? I used to love traveling before it became so annoying, right? And part of that is the unknown. Part of that is I'm going to turn a corner and I'm going to see something I've never seen in my life. And that makes me happy. That's my happy place, right? So, the other piece of this, there's a thing called interdependence. There's an amazing video. It's by Moxie, and it's an old video. It's like 10 years old, but it's like 3 minutes, and I use it a lot in my workshops. And it's about the value of interdependence, right? That the best we are is three of us right now, we cannot do this without each other.
Right.
And we can't do it without the people who are watching and listening right now either. We are interdependent with one another. And a lot of people don't like that because like, oh, I'm dependent on you. Oh, no, that's just like, it sounds like I'm going on welfare, but what it really means is think about the collaboration of that, right? I'm not a tech person. My husband, Chris, is. All right. I cook, he picks the wine. Interdependence. It's awesome. Right? And he does the dishes.
There you go.
And that symbiosis is a very healthy thing. And I think as a species,
I load the dishwasher and then my wife reloads the dishwasher.
There you go.
Yeah, I don't.
Same. Guilty.
I don't know how he did it. I just like, however he does it, that's fine with me. I'm just not touching it. So
the tines go up. The tines go up.
Yeah. I'm with you. But that those things there, right? And if you think about that, the energy we save if we're not unloading and reloading and going and doing that other thing that we are good at.
Yeah.
Right. So for me, it's like, let me go, read a cookbook or look up a recipe or, or something that I ate in a restaurant I want to learn how to make while he's loading the dishes, and we're all good and we're all happy. And we don't all have to be the same thing to all people at all times. Yeah. It's not only impossible, it's just exhausting. And I think that's a big part of this is, I want to value each of you for your unique voice, what you bring to this conversation. And if we're all like, ew.
And like on a personal level, I've come to know who I am a little bit, right? Like I am a focused person who, like I have, I'm an idea person, and I start things and I do things and I often do them wrong. And so it always helps me to have a calibration in there of somebody that's a meticulous person, that's a fine person, and that can come in and fill up. Like I had one coworker one time that somebody said, Kelly, without you, nothing would ever get done. And without Daniel, nothing would ever get done right. And I just, like Nahan is my meticulous co-host. She's a much finer person than me. She covers a lot of the gaps that I make, but we would not have this show without for me. So it's like I think that it helps us to reach out to different kinds of people and different people with different perspectives and everything. It makes us better people. It makes us more successful. It makes us improve. And I wish, like, that's to me is one of the things that really agitates me about DEI, is it's not just that you're reducing other people, you're reducing yourself to only being what you are. You're not. There's no chance of you're going to get better this way.
Right. It's very selfish, right? I know I, don't have those skill sets, right? So it's selfish of me to say, I want you on my team.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You doing those things will make me shine. We will shine, right? And plus it's fun. It makes it fun. If people, hard work isn't a problem if we're going to come together as a team and break our backs together. It feels good, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you achieve that thing, and there's nothing better than that. But we can't do that if we don't trust each other. We can't do that if I have to worry about you're going to make a denigrating remark about Puerto Ricans, like, or some microaggression. Like, if I have to worry about that and I'm not safe, if I can't breathe or relax with you, I'm not going to give my best. I can't. Right? Think about trying to run up a hill holding your breath. So if we can say, tonight I'm going to make you arroz con pollo and pernil.
Arroz con pollo.
Yeah, you're going to make me your favorite dish.
I don't know what any of that is, but I would eat the hell
See,
out of it.
I don't know, Wendy, if you saw, I shared I had a book for my daughter called Mama Provi and the Pot of Rice. And it is the best book ever. And I think that it is quintessential to explaining, in layman's terms, to how do you explain this to a kid, right? Exactly that story. I don't know if you're familiar. It's a Puerto Rican story. I don't know if you're familiar with the book. But yeah, absolutely. It's she makes a pot of rice and she brings the whole pot upstairs. Her granddaughter is sick at the top floor of the apartment building, and she goes up and she meets with her neighbors, and they give her something else, and she gives them a little bit of that rice along the way. And then by the time that she gets upstairs to her sick granddaughter, she has meals upon meals from all of her neighbors and one serving of arroz con pollo to share with her granddaughter, along with all the other things that she brought along the way. And it is a pitch perfect explanation.
I used to have a Korean neighbor that whenever they made Korean barbecue, they'd bring some over for us. I was so spoiled.
Jealous. Jealous.
Right.
Where's that? Where do they live? I need to be their neighbor.
We're almost at lunchtime here in the East Coast. So it's rice. Arroz con pollo is rice with chicken. And pernil is a Puerto Rican roast pork. It's like Puerto Rican pot roast. So that's my comfort food. But I love. But that story is so important and so beautiful because that and I think what the author talks about, the smell of the food, right?
Yeah,
as
you can smell it. Yeah.
During the pandemic, I was doing I each week, every Saturday, I would research. Well, during the week, I'd research a comfort food from a different place in the world, and watch YouTube videos and everything. And then every Saturday, I would cook it. And it was like, I still do it, not every week, but I really love to expand and kind of like find different. And the thing about comfort foods is they tend to be cheap, and they tend to be filling, and they tend to be really, really good.
That's right.
So, anyway. Somebody said if we deport all the immigrants, food is going to get really boring really fast. Well, I think that's a great metaphor for everything.
And really scarce. Yeah, and really scarce because who's going to pick it? Yeah, who's going to pack it, pick it, pack it, and deliver it. So yes, I agree.
Wendy, I know you've got an hour. We've taken a little bit over an hour of your time. I do have some just like a couple of short, high level questions to ask you. I know that you're not a lawyer, right? You're not. ISS is not a legal foundation. It's not a legal. You don't give legal advice. However, I'm curious to know, as far as you've got 25 years of experience in this field, what kind of advice can you provide to these public and corporate and federal employees that are now being faced with, drawback and expulsion even for their positions and roles for their company or within the government, where they're saying, hey, we're going to tell you you have to go because you were a DEI hire. What kind of advice or, just comfort can you provide to them in regards to that? Again, like I said, this is not legal advice. I have lawyers, and there's certain things that they can advise me on legally and certain things that they can't. So with that in mind, what sort of solace or advice can you provide to these people that are being faced with these sort of challenges?
Yeah, definitely. And even though I'm not an attorney, I do know a great deal about employment law. So no, I won't give legal advice, but what I will do is there were three things I would say. Number one, communicate with your coworkers. Somebody just, there were different ways, not on your work email, of course, or work device, but on personal devices, to connect with one another. That's really, really important. Number two, there are still, for many of these employees, there are different levels and types of employee unions and professional organizations. Reach out to them. They are your advocates. They are have access to information and again, power in numbers, right? One thing that we have been observing with the current administration is when there's enough pushback, like they were going to just, freeze everything. And then there was a great deal of pushback and brouhaha, and that was changed, right? So power in numbers, reach out to unions, to professional organizations, and additionally, reach out to attorneys. I know that there are multiple groups of employees, federal employees and federal subcontractor employees who are banding together and getting legal counsel, because you can file class action lawsuits, which are always more powerful and effective than individual lawsuits, because it's a whole class or group of people.
And they can be done anonymously. Yes, exactly.
Yes. And we're seeing that with employees from the CIA and FBI right now.
Right.
They are not named in the lawsuit. The law cannot force them to be named in the lawsuit. So I'm not legal advice, but legal
John and Jane Doe's 101.
And they assign numbers. So those are the three things. They communicate with each other, lawyer up, and find those professional organizations and labor organizations and advocates organizations that can help you. And they can help you financially. A lot of these groups can help you financially, can get you free legal. When I say lawyer up, do not pay a lawyer. Any lawyer that insists on an upfront fee, do not go there. Okay. Yeah. That much I could tell you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And also reaching out to your local representatives and everybody in Washington that is capable of helping you. There are people that will work pro bono for cases like this.
Right. And to your point, member of Congress, senators, etc. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, that's great advice. And my other question really kind of is just like maybe a closing statement in regards to, we didn't talk a lot about the politics about what is all happening right now with DEI and the administration in general. Not only, we did touch a little bit about public companies, private companies, and the federal government and how it's all being affected by these executive orders. I guess my biggest question to you would be like, do you believe that there is an opportunity for reconciliation at this point? Do you think that, or I guess, like, what is your prediction in regards to what is going to happen? Like, I need the under over from you.
So I'm not a lawyer. I am a historian, and no historian worth their salt would ever predict the future. So I don't, and I'm not a gambler, but I will tell you this. Number one, I think that, as I just said, actions can change situations. We wouldn't be here, thinking of the three of us, whoever your ancestors were or mine, it's a miracle that we're here together today, right now. And so what I do know is that, if people speak up, right? If people don't fall for the bullying, don't fall for the bait that is being put in front of them right now, don't fall for the sound bites, don't rely on, and I'll call it corporate media, to give you the full story, the full information. Do your homework. This is why I joined Blue Sky, right? Because it's really important that I know that I have access to information that's accurate, the facts, right? So
Right.
find sources where you can get the truth and get information. And so I think that's how I would predict this, is to say, if we can inspire, encourage, and facilitate more people getting access to real, like your theme song, Kelly, right? To real truth, and cut through the smoke
Hey,
screen, because
I got a quote from my theme song. There we go.
and, I think it's really, really critical that we dispel the disinformation, right? That we're diligent, like, let's go down the D's, all the D's, right? They're trying to disrupt, they're trying to destroy. So we say, no, we're not gonna tolerate that, and stand tall. The NPR piece this morning on PepsiCo, Disney, and others who are very, very quietly took all of the diversity, equity, inclusion, and access language out of their annual reports.
They
And
did
I
that
read
this
that-
morning. They did that this
Well,
morning.
it was reported this morning on NPR.
NPR.
So I posted it on Blue Sky. So they did it real quietly, stealth, right? So what I posted is, do the employees and customers of these corporations know about this? Right? So there's no law that said they need to do this. Right? It's not, they just did this. So this kind of complying in advance that's happening, this obeying in advance that's happening, needs to be discouraged. And the only way it can be discouraged is to remind them that the majority of us, the majority of the humans, not just in the United States, but all over the globe, oppose repression, oppose hate, oppose discrimination, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And we have to be loud about it and clear about it. And even if we're afraid, and even if we're under attack, I told all my friends, people are reaching out to me, because of what I do for a profession, right? That they're trying to vilify. I'm going to start walking around with a t-shirt with a giant D and, in red, like a scarlet letter, with my hands held up. I am 66 years old. Come for me if you need to. But the answer is, this is what I do. This is who I am. Yeah. And I think there are many, that there are many of us who will not tolerate bullies, will not tolerate liars, will not tolerate criminals trying to tell us that we don't have rights anymore.
Imagine screeching about hiring the most qualified candidate and then making Pete Hegseth Secretary of Defense. He has no qualifications at all other than being a white male that served in the military. I'll give him that. He served in the military. He has a Bronze Star, which
millions of people have. Okay,
to get a Bronze Star just means you are an officer during wartime. It is not like you're a war hero or something like that. He has, and meanwhile, they say that somebody like Lloyd Austin, who achieved the highest rank, has enough medals that you can make a bet out of him. He's not qualified. And it's like, well, I think I've identified the big reason why you think that Lloyd Austin isn't qualified, but Pete Hegseth is, and it might have something to do with skin pigment.
What, colorblind people are seeing color now?
It is interesting that the colorblind people always seem to identify the
people of color
people as DEI hire. Which, by the way, am I correct? There is no such thing as a DEI hire.
Correct.
That's correct.
Yeah, it's just, again, it's like this we make up stuff. We distort what words actually mean, and we try to make these things derogatory. And so once they've been made derogatory,
It's a dog whistle.
yeah, like the word liberal, right? Like the word progressive, right?
Yes.
These words were co-opted, and so like all lives matter. The co-option of language is not new, and it's been very, very effective historically. And so what I say is, I'm going to keep my language, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not, and I'm going to use the words rather than the acronym, right? So Karen Appiah just wrote an article in the Washington Post, I think yesterday, about the intentional integration, the resegregation of our nation.
Yeah.
Right.
You wrote the article?
Yes.
Oh,
and
if you want to give me the link to that, then I'll share that on Blue Sky for you.
Right.
Yeah.
And I no longer I don't have the post thing.
Oh.
But I'll find it. Someone shared it. I'll find it.
Yeah, and I also want to get I want to get access to the Moxie video. The Moxie video as well.
Yeah, so that I can send you. That one is public. They share that. They're a nonprofit. But I no longer subscribe to the New York Times or the Washington Post, and I say that publicly.
Neither do I.
Yeah.
I will say that publicly as well.
And I'm not on
Absolutely not.
So I just, I'm not going to be a party to disinformation.
Yeah.
And
so, Mark,
but her piece is really important, because as a Black woman, what she's saying is, we need to pay attention to who's being targeted here. Right. Yeah. And they may say that targeting DEI programs, but they're primarily targeting people of color.
Yes.
And that is intentional. And that is part of a strategy that the organizations and the individuals who are pushing for this shift have been long vying for. I guess that's the word. So anyway, I'm going to get off the soapbox.
No. Well, we love it.
So, as far as like Nahan has been a constant reminder, has been reminding us that a lot of the white women who voted for Trump, I'm sorry, I forgot, I don't want to say his name, but voted the orange turd, were that were all for DEI, getting rid of DEIs until they remembered they were DEIs. So
no, wait, remember, there's no such thing as a DEI hire. They were hired because of the opportunities that were available.
All for the leopards eating faces until the leopards ate their face. Like it's like, that just another one of those. Oh wait, you mean me too?
Yeah, right. They're finding out. Yeah, FAFO.
Yeah. And remember, it's real easy to say, I've been oppressed and not acknowledge someone else's oppression.
Right.
And that lack of empathy and that lack of understanding that every one of us has suffered some kind of indignity in our lives. Every one of us has suffered some bully or some sadist or whatever the thing is. But if I can't realize and recognize that I'm not the only one, then what happens at the end of the day is I wind up being alone in a room because there's no one else who I'm willing to sacrifice for. There's no one else I'm willing to give up anything for. So I'm here by myself going, R&I, poor me, and I'm all alone. So that's not going to work out for long. That's not a sustainable plan, I think, for any human. And I think you really said it well earlier, Kelly. It's on a personal level, it's our humanity. And at 3 a.m, when it's you, me, and the ceiling, and everybody else is quiet and we're just having, facing ourselves and our thoughts, are we comfortable with who we are?
Yeah. Right.
Right.
Do we feel better about ourselves because we excluded somebody, or do we feel better about ourselves because we included somebody? Very different things.
Right. If I got a piece, if I took that box and you can't see the game, do I really feel better?
Yeah.
I mean, just think about that.
I think all that seems pretty reasonable.
the fence thing is somebody said, why not just tear down the fence? Which
Well,
is,
because the baseball might go and crash into your window. That's why. That's why we have fences around baseball fields, because broken windows. So that's the answer to that one, as far as I know. But did you have any more questions?
No, and I was just going to say I apologize. We've taken you 20 minutes over what your time commitment was. We thank you for sticking around and for offering your expertise. And I really feel like I've gotten a little clarity on this. I've been wanting to do a whiteboard video on this, but I keep getting stuck in trying to figure out how to crystallize it and like what is the essence of it. And so I think the essence of it is inclusion as just actually it's almost like the word inclusion means something. I think, you know, like if we get into the acronym and breaking everything down, but the heart of it is we just accept people that are not like us, and that makes us better. It makes our organizations better. It makes our workplace better. It makes like just and you know, and unless they're Nazis or something, but you know, like not every ideology, but you know, different types of people, whether it's you know, whatever their sexual preferences are, or whether they're transgender, or whether they're straight, or whether they're whatever their religion is, or you know, there's all kinds of things. There's all kinds of different people, and our involvement with different people makes us better, and it improves everything.
That's it.
I agree. Yeah, and you know, from my perspective here, I hope that we can graduate from equity and inclusion and accessibility to justice, right? Instead of looking at that picture where you have smaller people standing on boxes to look at the game, we're all the same. It's not a smaller person, it's the same person. We're all people. And that is what I hope that we get to. If we can get through these next 2 to 4 years and hopefully graduate out of even DEI to justice. And no equity. Equity is a step in the right direction, but justice is where we all will be equal. And so I really hope for that. And I do appreciate the statement you made about do not obey or comply in advance. My statement, and to piggyback on that, is be insubordinate. Be an insubordinate. You know, continue to not just say no, but say why you're saying no. I think that everybody should be more vocal about why they have the opinions and the beliefs that they have, and why they're making the decisions that they're making. I think that we're in a time right now that is challenging because, you know, people's livelihoods are being threatened because of their stance on DEI and equity, just overall. You know, people need to have a job to make money, to work, to live, to pay their bills. But I feel like right now we have an opportunity where you're going to get fired anyways. So why not just say something? Like, just do it. Just say something. Once more people say something, other ones will speak up as well, which I think that's my be insubordinate note on that.
So I'm going to say, if a friend of mine coined the acronym JEDI, Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion. So think about a Jedi master.
I love that.
Mark Hamill would love that.
Yeah.
And the triangle that's keeping me going since November it's 3 things. The trifecta for me is resilient love, because no matter how beat up and battered I get, I still have love in my heart. All right. Persistent joy. I am not letting these people steal my joy. So you have to have some fun, because if we stay in the heavy, hard place all the time, it's brutalizing and exhausting. And strategic hope. So I have hope, but it's strategic. It's not just world peace. I'm really working on
intentional.
And having a strategy, because that's important for me. So that's my mantra these days. Every day I get up and I think of those 3 phrases.
That's wonderful. Well, Wendy, we really appreciate you coming on and elucidating things
Yeah.
for us.
Thank you.
And
thank you.
I definitely know where to go with my whiteboard video now. I feel so much on target, and it's really good to talk to people that actually know what they're talking about, because too much of the airwaves is filled with people who don't. So thanks for your time. Sorry we went half an hour over here, but
All good. All good. It's been my pleasure.
No.
It really is an honor. And I thank you both for everything you're doing. Keep fighting the good fight. And I'll see you on Blue Sky.
See you in the
Yeah,
Blue Sky.
absolutely. Everybody go ahead and follow Wendy on Blue Sky, www.bluesky.social. Anywhere you can find her, we'll put it in the show notes. Thank you again, Wendy. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you both. Stay safe, stay well.
You
All
too.
right.
You as well. You as well.
Okay.
Thanks so much.
Take
Bye.
care. Bye-bye.
So for
What
those
a great
still
yes.
sticking
Sorry.
around, we're gonna stick around until the top of the hour. We're gonna talk about a couple other things, but I think that went great. What do you think, Nahan?
I think that was fantastic. I think anybody listening, you and I included, learned a lot.
Yeah. I think
and that's the whole point of having the experts on the show, is that we are not the experts. We never claim to be. That's why we bring people like Wendy on the show.
Okay, well, you need to
fantastic.
go take care of something. So while you're doing that, I'm going to share an article that I wrote from my Substack that I think some people will be able to identify with, just as a way of moving on to the next thing. And if you get a chance, I hope everybody can read this. Here, I'll share it as much as I can. And it's on, I already have it shared on BlueStack, and we're just going to share it here on Twitter in the feed, and I think it should be automatically shared on Facebook and YouTube. But I'll ask everybody and kind of review for myself. Oh, whoops! I forgot to share it. Okay. And it's called "What Happened to You." And here is Donald Trump holding the souls of many Americans. Thank you, Grok, for the wonderful illustration. And I'll just read it. Might as well just go ahead and read it. I can't talk to the MAGAs in my life anymore. 9 years of obdurate denial have made that impossible. But if I could ask them one question, they would have to answer honestly. It would be, what happened to you? I know there are some people who would say nothing happened to them. They were always that way. But these were people I spent time with, lived with, worked with, suffered with, and even prayed with. They are people I know who freely gave hospitality to undocumented immigrants for a year, who had graduate and law degrees from prestigious universities like Harvard, Yale, and the University of Chicago, among others. And just, for the record, these were not, what do they call those? These were people that actually earned their way in. They weren't there because their parents were there. They were decent people, kind and intelligent. They were successful and generous with what life had given them. They were kind and caring. They did not hate immigrants or advocate for concentration camps or detention centers. They embraced all kinds of people and weren't white supremacists or against hiring people of color or against DEI, which we just talked about. They most certainly would not have celebrated ethnic cleansing. They would have guffawed at the idea that the FBI was being weaponized just because it prosecuted people who attempted a coup. They absolutely wouldn't have voted for the person who led it. They wouldn't have defended a man who knelt on a man's neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds until he died, or supported shooting people that protested it. They would have scoffed at the notion that vaccines are fake. In fact, they were all happy to vaccinate their children. They didn't believe that windmills cause cancer, magnets are ruined by water, that there is a giant water faucet in California, that you could nuke a hurricane, or a host of other blatantly stupid things. They didn't advocate for trade wars with Mexico and Canada, or invading Panama or Greenland. They would have absolutely scoffed at the idea that they would vote for a man who illegally paid off a porn star to keep quiet about sexual relations he had with the mother, while the mother of his child was nursing his newborn child, and then was convicted of it. They would have eschewed the actual teachings. They would not have eschewed the actual teachings of Jesus in the Bible. How do you pronounce that word? Anyway, nor would they have referred to me as an enemy of the people just for having a difference of opinion. But they are fine with voting for a man who does. I think of them and it makes me sad. I see them still walking around looking like the ones I loved, but no longer the people I once knew. They're just husks of humanity. It's as though some kind of body snatcher has assumed them. I know that many of them were already that way, but all of them weren't. Some of them gave away their souls a little bit at a time until they became unrecognizable. They are no longer the people I once loved, respected, and counted as friends. And I wish I could ask them, what happened to you? Do you even know how much you have changed? And why did you let him take your souls? So that's why he's holding all these souls here. So what do you think, Nahan? Have you lost people to Donald Trump? I think you're on mute or something.
That's why my thing was down. I have not. I am lucky that my social circle is small, by choice, that I have not lost people to MAGA, but I have seen it happen to other people, and it is sad. It is extremely sad. And I think that it becomes complicated. I've been in conversations with people where they're like, "Hey, I tried to bring up politics with my dad, and he lied about being at a funeral home for a family member that died." Like, people want to avoid these conversations, and it's either deflection or denial is what I see a lot of people dealing with in regards to what's happening right now. Luckily, I have not had that experience myself. My experience has been being married to a German, almost naturalized citizen now, who was not involved in politics prior to being in a relationship with me. And now he's the one who's turning on the news because he's concerned about what's going on. And I have seen a shift in his opinion and his attitude regarding politics in the United States and just what the fuck is happening. That's been my experience. But no, I haven't. But it sounds to me like you have. So what has that been like for you?
It's been sad, and it's like been a little bit at a time where you're like, at one minute you're just like, I can't believe that, like it, and then it just this slow erosion, and then it becomes, they unfriend you on Facebook or whatever because you don't feel that way,
Right.
And it's just like I was just thinking about it. I was thinking of some very specific people that, I know some people are just gonna say like, oh well, they were always that way, they were just waiting for an excuse. And I'm not denying that there are those people that existed.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that there are people that also are just corrupted by a steady diet of Fox News and right-wing media that slowly have their soul erode. And I don't know if there's a way to bring them back. Like, if I had told them, if I could go back to 2015 and say, look, you're going to be advocating for concentration camps for undocumented workers in 10 years. And they would have said, no, I'm not. You're being ridiculous.
Yeah.
And, and you have people that, so
No, and also Real Original Ritz Cracker. Oh, I miss Ritz Crackers on keto, man. Just to let you know, we did have a guest on for an hour, and so we're kind of regrouping here. We definitely do bring in our watchers' comments. Also, speaking of which, Kelly, you posted the link to the room here. If anybody wants to join in and come on and speak your voice and join in on the conversation, please feel free to. This is an open discussion. Again, as I said, though, we just had our guest here, the expert on a DEI, schooling us essentially, and so we're just regrouping here and figuring out, what our thoughts are there, and we want to hear yours as well. So please feel free to join in on that conversation.
So, yeah. And I was on a different screen reading the thing, so I didn't see your comments. So, and I think I've actually responded to a couple of your comments in the chat. But anyway, I'll repost that. This is the link. Is it real or
Real Original Ritz Cracker?
Oh, okay, real.
That's why I said I miss Ritz Crackers, because there's the StreamYard link.
So if you want to actually come on the show, and you can either share your video and audio or just your audio, but feel free to come on and talk at any time, unless we have a guest.
This is 100%
time, because we're trying to.
Yeah.
We don't want to. Anyway, like, I just wonder, and it comes to the, like, people say, oh, everybody just abuses the word Nazi, and it's like you call people Nazi or fascist, and it's like, well, maybe that's because you keep doing
the things,
like, if everybody, I don't get called a Nazi except by Nazis, because they don't, oh, you're, the
called a fascist,
socialist. They're the Nazi socialists. And
communist.
Like, no, the Nazis were not socialists. Sorry.
Yeah.
What is the poem? You know the poem, right? The famous "First They Came For."
Yeah, first they came for them, but I didn't care because it wasn't about me. Essentially,
who was the first group they came for?
The first group they came for.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember that one.
First, they came for the socialists.
The socialists. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. The socialists were the first. Were enemy number one.
How dare you give a shit about people? How dare you? It is a socialist. I think it's funny though that the right always kind of like convolutes. They show their stupidity when they call you a communist, or they even call you a fascist, or myself included. Yeah. They don't even know what those terms mean. They don't know the history behind it.
Communist, fascist, socialist, liberal, Democrat.
It's like saying Antifa is an organization. Vote for Matt Gaetz' forehead. 2028. He's been radicalized. But no, for real. I mean, I think that one of the things that we didn't really get to talk about, because I don't think it was important to have her talk about this, because what was the intent of the conversation was to learn from an expert about what's going on. We did touch a little bit about what can people do when they're finding themselves their jobs and their livelihoods being challenged and threatened. I think that there is far too much going on in regards to conservative activism, campaigning against DEI efforts. I don't know if we've talked about this on the show yet about ethical consumption, right? How can you shop at Target when they ixnay their DEI efforts? But if you live in a food desert area, Target might be the only place that has produce, and you have to shop there. And so you might not support their anti-DEI campaign or their axing of DEI efforts, but you still have to shop there. However, there's a lot to say about everybody bending the knee here, right? Target's doing it. The NFL says that they're so committed to DEI because it actually fosters racial equity and diversity within their hiring practices. However, they did take the end racism words off of the end field at the for the NFL Super Bowl because they found out Trump was coming. There's just a lot of conservative backlash in regards to DEI right now, not just on the public or private sector, but on the government side, which we've already seen, of course, with these executive orders. And so, I'm concerned because polls show majorly that Americans actually support DEI initiatives. So what are we actually doing here? Like, what is actually happening in our country where majority of people support something, but the government saying no? I guess we should get used to that, right? Because 90% of Congress is Christian, and that is not a representation of the public in general. I guess we should be used to that by now, right?
I think part of it that's going on is you have a president who will use his bully pulpit to be a bully. And so what people are afraid of is, like, especially these large corporations, the shareholders are concerned that he will, like, with a tweet or with a single statement, he can tank their stock value by launching a boycott of Target, for instance.
God forbid we launch a boycott on Bud Light.
And look what happened to Bud Light, right? so I mean, and it's funny that these are the people that complain about, the what is it, the not the boycott culture, but something like that. That when the liberals ban something or boycott something, then it's bad, but when they do it, it's just. And I personally don't like the whole thing. I think it's all, like, I don't like it when they do it. I don't like it when we do it, because I think the people that suffer when you do these bans and things are not the people that you want to suffer. Like, Elon Musk will lose money from from advertising on Twitter, but Elon Musk is not going to suffer from losing that money. The people that are going to suffer are the people who lose their jobs, and are the people that lose their jobs on Amazon. Jeff Bezos is not going to suffer. He's going to have a different ridiculous number in his bank account, but he's not going to suffer. So I personally feel like we should do things, I don't, but that's my decision, and everybody else is open to their decision. And if you choose not to support something that you feel is damaging, or, I can turn, in some cases, like with Facebook, I have a friend who, if you feel like, especially personally affected by Facebook's stance on transgender people, and don't feel to support that anymore, I feel fine with that. Like, I'm not saying don't ban it or don't boycott it. I'm just saying don't judge those who choose not to, because everybody has their own reasonings and everything like that. And so,
I mean, people
I feel like we've gotten to the point where there's like these moral purity tests that if you don't pass them all, you're not really a liberal, and you're just basically a Trump supporter.
Right. I mean, that's called blue and on, Kelly.
Oh, and then, I got
the blue and on.
Like, blue and on is like QAnon. Like, you're like, QAnon is believing in ridiculous conspiracy theory. It's like blue and on is just another empty term slapped on things like identity politics or whatever. I
believe that it has a place, though. It's for people that are like gung ho, dead set, no matter what.
But I get it.
Party.
But you have, like, like, if you want to classify it as like the left and the liberal as the two different fringes, or the two different sides, they both call each other blue and on, and they mean different things. And it's just
right.
I don't think that it helps anybody. I feel like the whole division between the left and the liberals, whatever however you want to call that, or, and then there's the centrists, and then there's like, like the Lincoln Republicans and all of that, it's like,
well, I mean, it's like, where is the line drawn?
To be fighting each other, except for Putin. Like, if Putin is happy with what you just tweeted, then you should probably rethink your tweet.
You might be the enemy if Putin likes what you tweeted. No, right. I mean, there's no box that everybody's going to be able to fit into, right? The question of how do you legitimize somebody that is actually fighting for the right things to be fighting for, everybody has their own personal experiences and things that matter to them that they're going to focus on, right? The blue and on thing, though, this is where I agree with it, is where it is blindly agreeing with whatever the Democrats do and not looking at it with a clear mind and saying, yeah, we might have faults and how do we fix that? The blue and on thing the way I see it is these people are just like gung-ho pro Democrat no matter what, right? These are a lot of the people.
That's a stigmatization that is not fair or accurate. Like, I get accused of being blue and on all the time because, like, I will actually try. Here's an example. Like, I think that there's nuance involved in a lot of things, and some people want to avoid the nuance and they just want to go to the moral extremes. So, like the Gaza war, right? There's a lot to consider there. Hamas invaded Israel, then Israel reacted to Hamas, and in that reaction they overreacted. But there's also still a very real danger to Israel, and Iran tried to attack Israel and bomb them out of existence, which, there are some Muslim extremists who want to obliterate Israel entirely. And there are some people in Israel who would love to obliterate Gaza entirely. And so it's not like there is a morally perfect side on this. And it's not like this thing started on October 7th, 2023 either. And, like if you go back and, you can go back all the way to, like Abraham's kids with this. But you can also go back to like World War I, where England made two promises. And they promised, on one hand, they promised the Palestinians, if you join us in resisting the Ottomans, then we'll give you your land. And then they also were privately selling land to Jews in Israel and saying, if you can support the war effort, and then you'll get this. So they're like promising two different people the same houses at the same time, and they're selling the Jews homes that Palestinians own. So imagine if somebody just comes up to your house and says, hey, I bought your house, and you're like, I didn't sell my house. You might feel a little bit affronted that, all of a sudden you're getting kicked out of your house because somebody bought it from the bank and not you. So, England, so that became a big source of contention with the resettlement.
You got big into history. Careful there.
So then, and then anyway, my point is just, it's a very complicated, nuanced thing where nobody's all right and nobody's all wrong. And Joe Biden was put in a position where it was impossible to have a right opinion on it. If he at all sides with Israel, then he is Genocide Joe. And if he at all sides with Gaza, then he is a different kind of Genocide Joe. Like, both sides are accusing the other side of genocide. And if you're not actively supporting one or the other, then you're guilty of supporting the inverse of it. And so it's like, if you try to get like if he had, even some people were accusing him of not being pro-Israel enough, including the right. And so it's.
I mean, I don't know, when you have legislators signing bombs that they're giving over to Israel, I can see why some people might think that, though, right?
Yeah, but then if you don't, but then you have to think, what if they don't give those bombs over to Israel?
But did they have to sign the bombs, though? That's the thing. Like, what?
No, but say you don't.
Don't sign them or send them, because those are two specific things.
That's a little more. I mean, there was actually, what it was is that they were already over there, and they were released to Israel. These were not like new bombs that were built and sent to Israel in the middle of the war. These were bombs. There was like an emergency supply that were released. And it's not even, and they needed, they needed that to defend themselves, but they weren't, and at the same time, they shouldn't have been using them to attack Gaza. And, you can say that was, foreseeable that they would. But if you hadn't, then what happens to Israel? Does Gaza go back in there? Not Gaza, but the Hamas. Like, it's just there was no perfect solution, no matter what. I feel like in a lot of ways, the Democrats lost the election on October 7th, 2023, because they were going to take the blame no matter what happened,
Mhm.
you know?
Right.
And
I
it's
guess.
not like Hamas. And when I say Hamas, I mean Hamas, not Gaza. I think those are different groups of people, and I don't think that the majority of Gaza
Right.
is in favor of Hamas, and I think that they are terrorists, but I don't think Gaza is terrorists. I think Gaza is mostly children, in fact.
Mhm.
But having said all that, there was no solution. Like, everybody wants to say what he did wrong, but nobody wants to say what he could have done that would have been right. And you say, okay, well, don't
Right.
let them have the weapons. Well, if they don't, and then, this is one of those things where it's like you can have there's no alternate history that's judged, right? Like, you don't know what
Mhm.
would happen if he didn't give Israel those weapons. Does Hamas
Right.
go in and kill even more Jews and kidnap even more Jews? Did they have there were 2,000 Israeli hostages. And yes, some of the reports were exaggerated about what they did to Israel, but they still, they did things. They did horrible, horrible things to these Israelites who did nothing to them. Some of them were
Right.
even Gazan advocates that were killed. So I just feel like, like when you get into the blue anon stuff and name calling and labeling, it doesn't help any productive conversation. It only increases the friction, and it causes us to fight with one another instead of with Trump. So that's my soapbox, and I'm sticking on it.
Yeah, no, I agree to that. I think that the only infighting I like to see is the one that is done on Twitter between these right wing sycophants that are insane. It warms my heart truly that the echo chamber on Twitter exists the way that it does now, because nobody, like people like myself and other people that I used to follow that are no longer on Twitter and now are on Blue Sky, we don't participate in these conversations anymore or try to reason with anybody over there. I mean, I have a Blue Sky or a Twitter account still just for purposes of viewing what's going on over there. But it's hilarious that the infighting with what is it, Sam, the guy from OpenAI and Elon, how they were fighting with each other on Twitter, and the whole Elon talking about the what is it, the H1B12, or God, I can't remember the name of
Oh,
the
I don't know anything, but I think I know he's like,
the immigration,
yeah,
being able to immigrate because of the jobs that you do, and
yeah.
how there was infighting there, and I was like, this is so rich. I was like, I'll eat this for dinner. Like, we don't need that on this side, though, is what I'm trying to say. There's enough of it happening over there where we don't need it. So I agree with you in that regard. I think that we have talked before, and I would love to have a conversation about it again, specifically explaining to people what the Overton window actually is, how to move it, what is currently existing within that window. But right now, I think that we have to, as a party and as a group, a collective of people, determine what is acceptable within that Overton window, right? I think that is where we can all meet and confer together, even though, like, let's say for instance, you have trans individuals in your family, I don't, right? But that does not mean that I don't care about them. But does that fit into the Overton window that's going to be able to influence the mass majority of people,
Yeah.
right? So where does that that doesn't mean that those issues aren't important, but where can we all collectively agree on something where we can make it work for everybody and move it from the fascist place that it is right now, right? Yeah, no infighting needed on our side. We can see what it looks like over on the other end, and it's a fucking clusterfuck. Not needed.
And it's like you look at the end result of, just going back to the Israeli Gaza thing. The end result of that was a bunch of people that didn't vote for Kamala Harris, either because they were on one side of the issue and felt like, they call her, Holocaust Harris became the new, and so they refused to vote for her for that reason. Or the other group of people that didn't vote, or possibly even were swayed to vote for Trump, were the people that were pissed off about the Holocaust, the left having these protests. And then that was like also blamed on Harris. So you had like two groups of people, like both sides of that whole thing only reissued in Harris losing votes. Right. And everything is worse now because Donald Trump won. And so, I mean, I feel like sometimes the left needs to learn to play chess and learns to like think about things more than one move.
Not even 4D chess, not even 3D chess. How about start with solitaire, Gen Z? Get it together. Do you know how to play solitaire? Listen, I agree 100%. I want to end the show on a note here with a video that I shared with you yesterday.
I love that.
This is in a nutshell.
And actually, Chris who shared this, not the young guy, but the guy with his hand on his chin. He's been like really hammering the same message as me on this.
Well, that's not Chris. That's not Chris on the video here. That's
no.
This video.
Yeah, he shared the Chris. Oh, I thought. Yeah, okay.
That's not Chris.
Chris Evans, the guy who shared this on Twitter.
Yeah, Chris Evans shared this, and there's another one too. Somebody else shared, but this is so. Just to give a synopsis on what you're about to watch here, guys, is a guy who was very pro Jill Stein, very pro third party, and voted in that regard. And then FAFO happened. So this is I would say this is a moment of Zen for me. So.
The volume, you need to, on the video, I think you need to unmute it. You can't hear what
the audio is not. Okay, hold on a second.
Yeah. You got to unmute it on your browser or on your.
It's unmuted on my browser. Hold on, I know what I got to do. Hold on. You know what? Technicalities, guys. I know what I got to do. I just got to download the video itself.
I don't know.
Anyways, wait, hold on. While I'm doing that really quick, I know we got 4 minutes. I can do it in 4 minutes. Can you tell everybody where they can follow us, where they can find us, and where they can find our guests on Blue Sky as well while I'm looking this up really quick?
We'll add all that. I'll add all that afterwards. But we'll sign off on this. We try to end before 2 hours is up because of AI reasons for creating clips. But go ahead, Nehan.
I think I've got it. I can add a media asset, right?
You should be able to. Video file right there.
Yep, I got it.
And we're gonna end hard after this is over.
Yep. I'm uploading it now.
Boom, boom,
I'll do it before the show next time.
We're at 1:57.
TikTok. Cuckoo. It's a coup. Wake up. Yeah, we'll see. It's only 54 seconds. I don't know how long it'll take. It's processing.
If we need
2 minutes.
It'll just give people a reason to come back to.
It will. If I don't show it today, I'll show it tomorrow. Do you want to
make an announcement? Joe Walsh will be joining us.
That's right.
The guitar player, but the former presidential Republican candidate will join us on Monday for the second hour.
Yeah, if you guys have any questions you want us to ask him, feel free to join us on Discord and put those questions in our episode ideas chat channel on Discord. We will be having him on. Yeah, but I think it's so funny when you Google Joe Walsh, it is not the Joe Walsh that you want to look up. Unless you're into his guitar stuff.
Joe Walsh, man.
But yeah, Illinois politician.
My Maserati does 185. They took my life.
All right, I got it. I got
Go.
it. We got 2 minutes.
This is the time
All
for
right.
all the minorities, all the movements, all the working class to come together and really build power and really fight against the fascism that's been here, but finally popping its head out and being loud and proud about it. And unless we do something, really come together, it's gonna get real bad.
Sounds good, bitch, but we should have did this November 5th. But might I remind you, you said this.
Vote for, if you want to vote Donald Trump to win, say that. Bitch, I will vote for Satan if I have to. I don't care who we got to deal with for the next 4 years, as long as you motherfuckers know that you fucked up and you guys are going to deal with some type of repercussion for what happened for the last 10 months. I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that bitch does not win and the Democrat Party loses the election. Fuck you guys.
And there we have it.